welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff, we actually have a topic, a question proposed by a listener.
Oh, excellent.
Yes. Um, I think before we dive into that, though, I have a question for you.
Oh, very well. Lay it on me.
Um,
Is this an important question?
this is an important question, and I almost relied on the old thing of quoting Monty Python, but I decided not to. What are you drinking this evening?
I am drinking my common concoction of Detroit. Well, this is bourbon, but happens to be Detroit City Butcher's Cut straight bourbon whiskey with some Fever Tree ginger beer and a splash of orange bitters.
Nice.
Yeah, and you, sir.
I have. That just amuses me every time. A 2021 Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. It's from the Abruzzo region of Italy, central Italy. Nice dark fruit notes, good tannic quality, very nice. Went very well with dinner, and that's what I'm drinking.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah. So our friend Charles, um, posed a,
Dr. Charles Cohen.
Dr. Charles, yes, posed a question and topic for discussion based on in response to a previous episode. That was episode 103, chapter 103, narcissistic morality.
Ah,
And
okay.
he wrote, based on your ending discussion, I have a potential topic idea. What has learning SCA fighting taught you over your lifetime? I think it's more than just the physical aspect and techniques. I think there's some outlook on life, philosophy, reacting to things, etc. You two have very long experience in this area.
Well, certainly true.
That's true. So he asks us really what I am thinking of as lessons from a life in armor. People
Yeah.
who wear armor refer to armor as harness, but I will say a life in armor. And but it applies to, I think, in a lot of ways, all martial arts.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was going to say. I think
yes,
you're right.
and lessons from that. And we both had experience with others. And I'm currently studying another form as well. So he asked about life and philosophy and reacting to things. So, what has your experience in the martial arts taught you about life?
Well, I don't know what it has taught me about life. Life is still a mystery, but reacting to things, I think, is an important point that he brings up. That it has changed my thinking about what's important a lot. Um, as you may or may not know, before I found the SCA and started learning to fight, I had a I had a very bad, violent, jealous temper. It was, and it was based as they almost always are. That kind of personality is based in insecurities.
Yep. Yep.
So learning SCA combat the same way I think a lot of guys or people, I should say, learn martial arts builds that confidence and tamps down those insecurities.
Yep.
And I think that just helps you get through life with more ease. There's a discipline that comes from it. There's an understanding of what how much pain you're willing to put up with. uh, and that goes a long way when it comes to relationships. How much pain are you willing to put up with?
Okay, that's took a turn I didn't expect into relationships because that's not,
Well, no, I mean it's
yeah,
any relationship, any talking
yeah,
to a
any, yeah,
person,
okay, yeah,
meeting a person at a party, relating, I guess.
relating, yeah. Um, I think that's a good point. I think that certainly confidence and, but I would say calmness and confidence, which I think also go together, because I think the insecurity leads to anxiety, a lack of confidence, and that can
Sure.
express itself as temper or another kind of compensation. I think the calmness um, and confidence are intertwined because if you have confidence, and confidence can come out of your experience in fighting. I endured this. I succeeded. I prevailed. I persevered, which are also benefits of
Right.
fighting and learning to fight. That that you can encounter situations with a calmness, and that improves your decision making
Right. Right.
because you're not just reacting. In there's stimulus and reaction, but between stimulus and your reaction, there's time, and you have, and it may be short, but there is always time in which you can choose how to act. If there's no time and you're just reacting, like in fighting, it's a matter of training, physical training, so that
Trained
you adapt,
responses. Yeah.
trained responses. But other kinds of stimulus, somebody says something, somebody does something, you have a moment to choose how you will react. And
And
if
I
you're
think I think
calm in that moment, you can choose more wisely.
well, and I think what I was about to say was you in that moment, calmness allows you to often to extend the time it
Yes,
takes to choose.
yes,
Um, and make allows you to make a better decision because you can choose to you can take as much time as you like to respond if you are calm.
yes.
So yeah, I think that's an important thing.
And
Um,
I think
and
it's
and
interesting because I see some people approach fighting SCA fighting. We're talking about fighting in the SCA, the Society for Creative Anachronism, which is, as most of the people who listen to this understand, a medieval reenactment group that has a competitive martial sport in armor with rattan weapons. And learning to do that, learning to persevere, applying that um, is can lead to calmness. But I see people who, um, before fighting, who it reminds me of when I see football players do, and they're really amping themselves up, and they're slamming Red Bulls, and they're beating their chests, and trying to they're trying to make up with aggression what they, I think, sometimes lack in technique. And
yeah, and
I've seen,
it can bridge that gap for a while.
yeah, but not forever. And
No,
I've seen I've seen actually people advising younger fighters, you have to be more aggressive. And but they're using the word incorrectly. It's not
yeah,
aggression, it's assertiveness, it's definitiveness, it's action, it's a number of things that they are lumping all together as aggression. Um, so I think for me and for you as well, I think, but I'll speak for myself. My approach has always been calm and analytical rather than emotional. Not an emotional fighter, but an analytical one. Um,
right.
and when there's no time to analyze, then there are trained responses, but you have practiced those so that you don't have to think about them because that frees your mind to think about strategy. And that idea of being calm, being trained, and being analytical, giving yourself the time to be analytical, I've applied that in a lot of aspects of my life. Someone will, in a business situation, someone poses a difficulty, asks a question, there's a dilemma. You can, if you're calm, you don't panic, you think about it.
Right.
You have trained yourself to know what the possible solutions are, and you can go through those in the
Right.
classroom. I don't, it does no good to panic. Something doesn't happen, something doesn't work. The, reminded of beginning of a semester, the university's IT department decided to update all the classroom computers the night before, so nothing worked, of course. So the first day of class, computer's not working, a monitor's not working, the nothing. I can't even get the lights on to make shadow puppets, which I joked about with the students. But I use that as a teaching moment, as they say. Say, look, this happens. You will find yourself inevitably in some kind of client presentation where
At the
nothing
mercy
works.
of failed technology.
Right. So you better know your material well enough that you don't need to rely on the technology. So I just taught the class without notes, just off the top of my head, just what everything. And I figured anything I miss, I'll pick up next class, you know? And it worked fine. And it was a good lesson. But that kind of calmness, I think the fighting arts, practice, the martial arts can help you with that.
Well, well, going back to what you were saying about, aggression and people amping themselves up, and I think there's always been a difference in my approach because I think the I think there are some who have a difficulty separating in their mind uh, explosive physical exertion and violence.
Yeah.
That there's no difference. That their body, the only way they can respond is violently in a because yes, the type of fighting we do, although I think you're right, both of us approach it very calmly and analytically, it is intensely competitive.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So when you are in there, you're pushing and shoving and you're moving fast and you're throwing hard and you're really physically exerting yourself. And we hear guys mainly, but people talk about this is a violent sport and I'm here for the violence and I can't wait. And I have never really thought of what we are doing as violence.
No,
Violence
neither have
to
I.
me is
Yeah.
a fight or flight. Choosing fight over flight is choosing violence. And this is not
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah. It's
I've never,
physical, but
absolutely,
it's not violence.
I've never thought of it any more violent than a very tough tennis match.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, in my mind, that's what it is. It's the same kind of physical exertion. Um, but I'm not trying to dominate physically or hurt somebody, which is what violence is.
Yeah. There's
So
there's
I
a
think that it's easier for me and you who don't think of it as violence. We don't need to get amped up
right.
because a lot of, I mean, most people, most rational people have to build themselves up to violence. It psychologically, violence is difficult psychologically if you are not completely inured to it.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah.
so someone who isn't completely inured to violence in general has to kind of build themselves up to that kind of physical response. I mean, and you see boxers MMA fighters occasionally lose control of themselves
Mhm.
in a match where the referee can't pull them off, or they take a swing at the referee, for God's sake. That's a person who can only see his sport as violence.
Yeah.
He can't separate them. And his all of his responses are violent, fight or flight type, instinctive type responses. I think he's been able to train himself enough to channel that into a learned response. But I think that's the phenomenon you're seeing with
Yeah.
the people who have to, they amped up and they're pounding drinks and they're trying to substitute the adrenaline dump that actual violence provides.
Yeah. And I calm myself down before fighting.
Oh,
I calm myself. I use breathing. In fact, my Sifu, where I study Kung Fu, says that meditation is the foundation of all true martial arts. To still and thus control the mind is of the utmost importance. And I agree with that because if you and we exploit that all the time
oh yeah,
in
sure.
SCA fighting. You flinch in a way, an intentional way. You feint to cause somebody to react. Now you can take advantage of that. But
Right.
if you're calm, you can read people's tells more easily. So I calm myself down before I center myself. I calm myself. Because that for me is is I'm controlling my mind. I'm more likely to be able to control the fight. And
Right.
controlling the fight, you're fighting for control of the fight. That's where the real fight is. um, and that has applied in a lot of situations. Something
Yeah.
it's it's funny because I've been writing about improv and talking to a lot of people who do that, and I think it's a very similar thing in a lot of ways because you are you're calm, but your mind is very active and your body is very active. So how are you calm and active at the same time? And people don't understand that you can be you can be emotionally calm and centered, and your mind can be very alert, very active. And the more emotionally calm you are, the more mentally alert you can be.
Yes. And I think there can come a certain detachment with calmness that you can be, like you say, being physically active, exerting yourself very, very hard physically while remaining completely calm mentally.
Yes.
You see uh, weightlifters, like professional power lifters. You see some of that. Although some guys have, do the scream and the smelling salts and the whole thing. Um, and I also think there's an interesting phenomenon about or surrounding controlling and we talked about discipline, right? That is the control over that sort of primal tendency to exert yourself violently, right?
Mm.
And it's a I've wondered about this when I ever watch MMA fighting. I've seen it recently in Olympic style fencing matches where there's in the fence or in an MMA match, it's pretty violent. I mean,
Mm.
you are literally trying to physically dominate your opponent. You're trying to beat them into such a state that the referee will stop the fight for fear of further injury.
Hmm.
Right? Olympic style fencing, though, is very much a chess game. It's physical, certainly, and it requires uh, um, quick bursts of energy. But you see the match is very tiny, very small movements back and forth, and then there's an explosive movement where the two fencers come together, and one fencer will rip his helmet off and scream like he's just killed a lion with a jawbone of an axe. And I'm like, okay, dude, that was not. I'm not sure that your victory celebration equals the amount of adrenaline.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but but the and you see it in an MMA fight when a guy wins that he will do that. I mean, all of his muscles tense up and there's that primal sort of yell. And I wonder if it isn't you build this up, this ability to exert yourself, or the notion that you are going to exert yourself as hard as you can for as long as you must. And when it's over, you need to expel it somehow.
That's a really interesting theory because, and you could absolutely be right. I know that I really don't like that in fencing. I don't like it in watching football when, oh, somebody made a tackle on the second down of a
Yeah.
play in the second quarter and they celebrate like they got the Nobel fucking prize. It's like, are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But I would much rather see maybe it's just me. Oh, he's trying hard. He's really, he's really showing he's showboating. And I don't like that. I think just go out there, do your job. I'd rather see somebody catch a touchdown in the end zone, catch a pass for a touchdown in the end zone, and then hand the ref the ball and go back to his team instead of he has to invent his own dance to
Yeah.
trademark to do.
I agree. I know, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, it's, yeah. On the other hand, I think taking that idea of end zone celebration or every play celebration and applying that to other professions would be wonderful. I just balanced the checkbook.
Victory
I
dance.
I just finished grading paper. Well, when I am just finished grading papers, I know what I want to do. So, but yeah, it so again, it depends where you are deriving your energy from, what that approach is. And I am not denigrating the skill and hard work and training of any of those professional athletes
No,
to
sure.
do that. They are absolutely skilled. Um, but it's just I have a distaste for that kind of
Well, and I also see it
performance.
particularly in the MMA application that I was just talking about is when because you see the guy, the guy goes down and the ref stops the fight, and the guy immediately goes into a celebration and he climbs the fence and screams at the crowd or whatever. There's two other responses that one I respect more, and two is more terrifying to me. The one guy who will he'll go like greet his corner guys or whatever and say, yeah, we did it, yeah. But then he immediately goes back and makes sure that the guy isn't his opponent isn't hurt too badly. Right? That's
Yeah.
okay. That's respect.
Yes.
This man is a professional athlete.
Yes.
He's in there to do a job. That guy was his job, but now his job is done, and
Right.
we don't have to be enemies, right? The guy that's more terrifying is the guy goes down and he doesn't care. He just
Yeah.
there's no celebration, there's no victory roar or anything like that. He just turns, walks back to his corner, like, okay, who's next? That's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's quite a bit scarier to me.
Um, I think one of the other things that is significant for me, out of my experience in SCA fighting and other martial arts, is the understanding that there's my energy, there's your energy, my partner or opponent, depending on the martial sport, and there's our energy together.
Hmm.
And that understanding that, and that our combined energy is greater, I have taken that into my interactions with people in professional situations.
Hmm.
That it's not, I'm not imposing my energy on you. I'm not, neither are you imposing your energy on me. Together we are making something. And I've had the opportunity over the past few years for the book I'm working on to interview lots of people, more than 100 people. Um, and but I tell them, and this was my approach, I don't think of this as an interview. I think of this as a conversation.
I was
And
going to say exactly that.
and I will start the conversation. I'll with some questions or prompt you with some things, but I want this to be a conversation. I want this to be um, a discussion around the issues. Like we are, it's not me at you and you at me. It's not this. It's both of us orbiting the subject, like a common center, like a binary star system orbiting around a common
Hmm.
center, as two things in orbit always do. Um, the Earth orbits around the sun, but because of the mass of the sun, the common center of the orbit is within the sun.
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
Um,
The sun
so
wobble. The sun wobbles a little bit.
yeah, exactly. Um, um,
Well, it's
so
an that's an interesting approach to an interview that
yeah,
I'm not sure everyone everyone can see or adopt. But I think that there are some cases where, and you see some interviews where the interviewee is clearly the celebrity and the dominant individual in that conversation, and they're there for a purpose. They're there to promote a new project or something, and you see the interviewer trying to, certainly they're certainly not at a level where they are trying that they are going to have a conversation with them.
right,
Nobody really wants, nobody is watching this interview to listen to the interviewer talk.
right.
So it's a different, I think the dynamic might be a little different in
Yes. Well, I wasn't, I was trying to center their voice in this. I would tell them things about my own experience in order to build a connection, but also because I generally ended up enjoying these conversations a
Oh,
lot.
I
And
can see, I imagine it's so, but again, this isn't your job. I think you find
well,
some.
I wasn't trying to, they weren't trying to promote anything, and I
Right,
wasn't trying to get them to reveal something.
right,
I was there to give them an opportunity to tell their stories.
right. Okay.
And so I
Like I said, that
was,
dynamic worked in your case,
yes,
not won't work in every case.
no, and I'm not doing that. I'm not, that was, I had a very specific purpose, so I had a very specific approach. But for me, it was an example of our combined energies made this the um the revealing of this story possible
Mm.
in a way that if I just said, okay, tell me your story, and it was all on them, that wouldn't, I would be giving no energy to the situation.
Sure.
And if were, there were some people who really were not, they were very reluctant. And so it was a matter of building trust, and it was a matter of, in it worked certainly sometimes better than others, but it was not, um, it was a common purpose. And I think a common purpose is essential to having that joint energy, that shared energy. So in SCA fighting, for example,
Well, wait, I think what you're describing to me sounds like, in some ways, being a good conversationalist,
yes, yeah,
right? The
yes,
goal is to build the conversation, not dominate
exactly,
the conversation.
exactly, exactly. Just as in SCA fighting, the goal is a good fight, is a good passage of arms, it's winning is a byproduct.
Right.
It's always a byproduct of properly executed technique and timing and understanding that energy. And when I say it's both our energies, I have to understand my opponent or partner's energy. If they are very um, aggressive, or if they're very laid back, or if they are twitchy, if they flinch, if they don't react, if that's understanding that and merging with their energy in a way to create something is one of the things I've had to learn to do. And
Hmm.
that's one of the things that's the most fun. Um, um, yes,
No, and you're absolutely right. And I think of a a good fight is a good conversation, and
yes,
the best conversations you have in your life are with your equals, or people who
yes,
you find intellectually stimulate you or bring out the best in you. Those are the best conversations that you have. So yeah, your best fights are both challenging and uh, uh, synergistic, I guess,
yeah,
using
yeah.
where you were going. They're challenging you, but they're also bringing out your best. And
Yes,
we both had fights where we've lost. I mean, where you get
yeah,
hit, and it's a 1 point fight, the way our sport
yeah,
works, and come out of it going, man, that was great, that was fantastic. You want to
yeah,
do it again?
yeah, exactly. And and um uh
and
sorry.
there and there have been other fights, certainly, and this is back to
Oh yeah, yeah,
saying at the very beginning of how much pain do you want to put up with, is that sometimes someone who's I mean, really, I mean, objectively good at what they're doing, at getting that 1 point, but they don't bring anything. They don't, they're not trying to have a conversation. They're trying to
right,
make a point.
right.
And you can say, okay, well, you made your point. I
Yeah,
guess we're done. We're done
yeah,
talking now.
yes.
And it's easy to walk away from that kind of conversation.
And there are some where the only joy in that fight is when it's over.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to end the conversation so
Yes.
that it
There
stops hurting.
there are also, just like in any conversation, you can within the conversation be inspired to have a new thought,
Mm,
to think
hmm.
something new. And it's the same in fighting, where somebody you're evenly matched, it's and it's back and forth, and then suddenly you are by the situation, you have a new thought, you're inspired to a new technique, a new idea, a new expression, a new saying, a new word. And and that leap, that moment, that insight, those are wonderful. And
Oh
I
yeah.
know I've had that too. It's in fighting and conversation where, this is not working. Oh, and then suddenly, yeah, can't talk about fighting with my arms moving, right? And then it's like, oh, and you see it in the idea, the phrase, the thought, the movement in an instant, and you do it, and it works. And that is something that applies in lots of situations. Um, when I've led brainstorms, I've taught brainstorming creative thinking and studied it. And it is when people come to those sorts of things with ideas, and I call it a brain dump. You dump out all the ideas you have on paper, and then people will pause, and then if you if the conversation is prompted correctly, they will come up, there'll be this second wave of ideas
Mhm.
inspired by other ideas, and then it'll pause. And then if you keep going, there can be these breakthrough ideas when people push past those ordinary barriers. And that's true in fighting too. It's
Yeah.
true in fighting, it's true in conversation, it's true in creative thinking, it's true in life, that you can do just the first thing that comes into your head, but that's not necessarily the best. Um, it often is, let's go deeper, let's push more, let's explore this further. Is this the right word, or is this the right word? Is
Well, it's
this
so
the right
true,
idea, or can it be better?
and I think in some ways that's why we call them martial arts, because an artist, a musician, for instance, you start out and you learn one song, and you can play that one song, and you might get really really good at playing that one song. You're not really a musician until you understand music and can play other songs, right? You can read the music, you can play the song, you can vary the song, you can, you know, and same with the visual arts. You might learn a, a technique, or you might be able to do, one set of tools. You may have command over one set of tools, but a really good artist will push themselves into other media. They may return to one that does more of the things that they want it to do, but the masters and most good artists will push into other areas of media, right? Um,
My When I told my current publisher that in addition to writing the book I'm working on, I wanted to design it, they looked at me with that, you writers don't design things. That's not, how can you? And I ended up being glad because it was just a lot of work just to get through the writing, but they didn't seem to understand that no, you can do more than one thing.
yeah, right.
And actually have used the analogy of tools, and say a woodworker, and you can have all the best tools in the world and beautiful wood to work with. And if you simply dump the tools on top of the wood, you won't have anything. The
Yeah,
master knows which tools to apply in which situations, with which materials, in what order, in what way, with what techniques, to make something new and original. And that is art. And so, and in life, it's true too. How do you how do you, I was substitute teaching many years ago in a class. Oh, I don't even remember what the subject was, but the teacher who I was substituting for had left very explicit instructions, and they were supposed to take a test that day. So like, great, I handed out the test, and they had pencils, and a student raised their hand for a question and said, "Does spelling count?" And I said, "Okay, put down your pencils. Listen to me now. No, no, listen to me. I'll just take a minute here. You asked if spelling counts. The answer is yes. Spelling counts. Word sentence counts. Neatness
Penmanship.
counts. Penmanship counts. Timeliness counts. Punctuality counts. Courtesy counts. Um, Everything counts all the time for all your life. And they looked at me like I had just stolen their puppy. It's like, no, I'm serious. Everything counts all the time. Okay, take the test.
That's right. And, and more so the score on your test. So concentrate on that.
Yeah, yeah. But it's who's going to tell them, you know? And so everything counts all the time. And
To greater or lesser extent,
except when
depending
it
on the
doesn't,
situation.
you know, what's that?
To greater or lesser extent, depending on the situation. But
Yes.
yeah,
Well, and uh, it doesn't if you lose at a game of solitaire,
yeah,
you know, no, doesn't really count. Except, and this is true in say in a tournament fighting situation, the SCA, there may be something called buy fights where because of the odd number of
right,
participants in the tournament, it doesn't work out exactly for a standard double elimination tournament. So there will be fights that someone will have to fight so they have the same amount of fatigue, supposedly. Um, but the results don't count. They automatically win. It's called a buy fight. Rather than just skipping and not and being able to go on
yeah,
to the next round, they'll fight it. And some people say, well, it doesn't matter if I win or lose. So no, it does. It does. It doesn't matter in the score, but it matters in your head
yeah.
because winning is a habit and an attitude and so on. It means that this is a practice. Can you enter that conversation with someone you've never spoken with before? And how quickly can you do that?
Right.
And if you're not doing it here, you're less likely to do it when it matters.
But there's actually two skills involved there.
Yes.
You want to win, even if it's a buy fight. You want to win because you're right. You want to develop that habit and you want to develop the skill necessary to do that. But there's a second skill. If you lose, you've got to put it behind you.
Yes.
You've got to say, okay, I lost. I understand why. Next fight coming up, that is the past now. This next fight, I've got to focus better. I've got to focus more. I've got to do whatever it is I failed to do in the last fight. Now I've got to do it. Now it matters.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there, you're, one way or the other, that fight matters.
Yes. Yeah. Um, we've been going on for some time now,
Yeah, we
and
have like 6 years. It's crazy.
oh, we've been going on for a lot longer.
Well, we've
Yeah.
we've only been sort of putting it out on display like this on a regular
Um,
schedule for people.
yeah.
Yeah, well, you and I have been going on like this for 35 years, 40 years,
Yeah,
something like
long
that.
time. So I think the I think it was a good question. It was a good topic. It's a good idea that
Oh yeah.
there are. I think there are other lessons. You know, perseverance. Yeah, I don't want to put my armor on today. I don't want to go to practice. I don't want to do that, but I do because persistence, perseverance, these things. These things matter. Um, it's doing it again and again and again, even when it gets difficult, is is important.
Well, in
And I
fact,
think that's a lesson for a lot of things. So,
and just from a personal perspective these days, um, I fought. I've been participating in this sport for 40, 43 years. You, you 2 or 3 years longer than me.
45 years, probably. Yeah.
And and I've been competitive at the highest. I think I can say without too much conceit that I've been competitive at the highest levels
Yeah.
for most of that time. Um, but part of it had to do with, we have these biannual tournaments that select our leadership, and I fought in almost all of them, in as many as I could. Um, and I've been more successful than anyone in our area, than our in our region, and I can say that because it's an absolute fact. But I'm done. I know that I knew years ago that my skill level was starting to become a victim of my age,
Yeah.
and I won the last one I entered and decided that I'm done with it. That I'm not going to be able to live up to what I think I should be doing anymore. And that's hard.
Oh,
That
yeah. Oh, yeah.
um, there's nothing for 40 years. I was either, you know, training, getting ready to fight for a crown tournament, or just finishing a crown tournament, or doing or being the king, carrying out the reign that I just fought for. And now I don't have that to chase anymore. My incentive for staying in shape, staying in armor, and going to practice, it has dropped precipitously.
Well, yeah.
um, but what I found lately, we have this influx of a handful of new fighters, new guys
Mhm.
entering the sport. I'm like, okay, if nothing else, maybe out of this crop of new people, if a couple of them stick around and I can have some hand in instilling the lessons that you and I have learned over this
Mhm.
many years, then maybe that's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. Um, it's, I won't say it hasn't gotten tougher to do it. It certainly has. Um, and I think now for me, winning was always the byproduct. It was the pursuit of the excellence
Yeah,
in the
sure.
art. And um, now I think it's pursuit of the fun for me. And I think that f- pr- enjoying what I'm doing is another kind of calm.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny, there have been any number of times in the dojo where I'm practicing where we'll have doing partner work with heavy pads, and you're one you would trade off who's holding them, and you're punching and you're kicking them, and I'll get a smile on my face, even if whether I'm holding it or whether my partner is holding it, and just because there's something for me enjoyable in that physicality.
Sure.
There's uh, we sometimes call it in the SCA joie de combat, that joy of that. And I think it's the physical exertion is in itself an enjoyable thing. And when you can focus it into a purpose, then it becomes something to focus your mind around as well. And that keeps you coming back and keeps it enjoyable. So
So as you're saying, we answered the question, I think,
I think so.
satisfactorily.
I think so. I hope so. And I think Charles will tell us if we have.
Yep. Um, yeah. So I think we can leave that here,
Yeah.
and please like and share and comment. We've
Yes.
we've now this is now like our second or third suggestion for topic that we've gotten. We
Yes.
we can use some more. Please send us your ideas, your thoughts, your arguments, whatever, your complaints. We'll probably ignore those, but because
No,
we're
if somebody, I would like to hear from those participants in the martial sport who do that, you know, think of it as violence or pump themselves up. I'd like to hear from them. It's not my approach, but I'd like to hear from them.
well, yeah, you know what? That would be an interesting kind of an interview to do.
Yeah.
Um, some of you guys that are out there doing buhurt and that kind of like like seriously taking a risk out there
Yeah.
getting injured.
Well, we
Um,
did we did way early on. That
yeah,
was we did interview people for who were participating in that about what they were doing.
yeah, we
And
didn't dig into their motivations too much though.
no, we didn't. I
It
think
was
honestly, I think if it was 40 years ago, I'd probably try my hand at it. Um,
uh, well, this may be a whole other conversation that we could have, but
yeah,
my viewing of it so far is that I've always, like I said, I don't think of what we do as being particularly violent.
yeah.
What they're doing is pretty violent.
Well, I don't think that I'm one for their group. I would
No,
have ever been one for the group fights, but the one-on-ones, yeah,
the
I could
singles
see
duel, yeah,
that.
like you said, 20 years ago,
Yeah,
30 years ago, the singles
yeah,
duel would have attracted me.
yeah,
This when we started, this was the only game like this.
yeah. It really was. It was.
Um, so now there are choices, there are alternatives that
Yeah.
people can follow. So yeah, I probably would have tried it. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not sure if I could have. The trick would have been affording the necessary armor.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
and back then the armor wasn't as available either.
oh heck no, no heck. We have seen this huge. I don't want to call it renaissance exactly. That's a little too on point, but this
Of greater
surgeons.
availability of
Yeah,
armor and weaponry than we ever saw
and
when
it's definitely due to this Buhurt movement. They've got to
yeah,
have
yeah,
this type of armor. This it's got to be stand up to this kind of combat. It's got to be this period, fit in with this
yeah,
period. And yeah, we have been able to take advantage of that in the SCA.
exactly.
Um, we're also seeing in the SCA uh, rapier combat, which is unarmored or was unarmored, and now we have the additional sort of upper levels of that of cut and thrust,
Yes.
which does require a certain level of armor.
I
Um,
actually have a um appropriate faceplate being worked on for my helmet. So
oh,
my armored fighting helmet, a rattan fighting helmet, I have a new faceplate in the works for so I can just use that for cut and thrust.
oh.
So
I went ahead and bought a relatively cheap ready-made helmet
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm in the and that's I think where I may rediscover some of the fun is in the cut
yeah.
and thrust aspects because I'm now working on getting that the harness for that squared away. But
Oh, well, that's on my list.
yeah,
So cool.
and that's a whole other pursuit now
Yeah,
in our organization. So and a worthy one
yeah,
from what I can tell. I'm afraid you may have an advantage of me there. My experience is a couple or last week I went to one of the larger regional meets, one of the events for
mhm,
fencing and cut and thrust, and I am I am impressed, and I find it very admirable. The scholarship behind a lot of what they're doing is absolutely amazing.
Yes.
I think I may have to learn some Italian to just talk to these people to feel like I can have an intelligent conversation with them. So yeah, it's a whole other pursuit that I have just barely dipped my toe into.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. I look forward to it. So cool. Okay. Now I think we have tangentized ourselves.
We've
Yeah.
we've done it.
Okay.
Done it
It's a
again.
requirement when we.
Well, now I think our burgeoning audience has come to expect that. I think we'd be disappointed if we just stuck right on topic.
Yeah, I think probably. But I don't think they have anything to worry about. So,
No, I don't either.
so as we said, please like and share and leave your comments. And until we see you next time, be thou
A good night.
and true.